Welcome to Lutherans Alive. We believe that God is doing wonderful things through us, and so this program seeks to tell the stories of Lutheran Christians and our ministries here in Southwestern Pennsylvania. I'm Pastor Tony Schneck, pleased to be your host today, and our guest on the program today is more often behind the camera, but today we've asked him to be here as a guest on the show today. Dennis Lane is sometimes operating the camera here at Lutherans Alive, and when he's not doing that, he's working at WTOV television in Steubenville. Dennis, welcome to the program, and tell us a little bit about what it is that you do at WTOV.
Well, right now I am a news photographer, editor, and live truck operator, and just the general go-to person a lot of times. I get to go out on scenes of, for example, a lot of different stuff, whether it be, unfortunately we have house fires, we have stuff that makes the news, and realistically every night that you watch the news, a videographer is behind everything that you see. So realistically, you need those guys. But I get to go to a lot of different stuff, a lot of high-level stuff, a lot of just your everyday stuff where you have to see all kinds of people in different circumstances at the worst of times and at the best of times. So it's an interesting profession to be in for sure.
Everything from elected leaders making an appearance to a cat stuck in a tree, right?
Exactly, and everything in between.
And everything in between. Now, tell us a little bit, if you would please, about your involvement in the church also. Now, that's what you do with WTOV is your profession, but also you have volunteered your time in your congregation at First English Sharpsburg, where you happen to be a member, but also here in the life of our Synod. Can you say some things about what you've been doing?
Sure. For example, in the Synod, I sit on the Congregational Life Committee. I also volunteer for Lutherans Alive, Lutheran Disaster Response, which is a brand new task force of Lutherans that have started realistically going to the trips to Mississippi and New Orleans now. And then I also sit on Synod Council, which is an interesting position because sitting on Synod Council is an awesome responsibility, an awesome job, but you have to be at the top of your game during the whole 6.5, 8 hour, whatever, how long it is, meeting. And you realistically have to be on top of it. And at my home congregation, I serve as church council person, property committee chair, you name it. I've done it probably at that congregation, unfortunately. Or fortunately. It's been a lot of fun. So.
Good. And having grown up in the church, you've seen the church at work, and as a young person, I know coming through there as part of your youth group, and that has led to your involvement as a young adult in the life of our church. And now, can you say a little bit about where you are in your journey right now, the things that you've seen, as you spoke a few minutes ago about a lot of things that you've seen in your work as a videographer, news stories, both the highs and the lows of life in the community. Can you say some things about what you've seen and your variety of experiences that you've had, and how you see those things through the eyes of faith?
To put it into perspective, to see things through my viewfinder, that you have to see through your own eyes to go through the eyes of faith, it's just an interesting complex. I mean, you have, for example, a couple weeks ago I was on the scene of a fatal house fire, and you have to, unfortunately, it's a mental thing. You have to actually know that the person is unfortunately gone, and that they're going to have to, that they've gone to heaven, but there's people left behind. And I know that, for example, from your perspective as a pastor, you've certain things. Well, as a videographer, I have to do we do a different story. We do the story of how we got here to this moment where they actually died and why it happened. And we're always asking the why. And that's important, is to ask the why, so that you can try to prevent things from that happening again, or at least telling their story. For example, we've done a lot of stories of our armed forces that have fallen in battle and performing their duty. And every day it's interesting to see their stories, to see their home stories, to see everything related to that.
One of the things that young adults are thinking about a lot, even from high school on into young adulthood, is vocation. And what is it that I am called to do? Where does God want me? What gifts and talents do I have to offer, and how can I use those? Can you say a little bit about your journey to where you are? How did you get to be a videographer? How did you get interested in what it is that you do, television and media? How'd you get hooked?
Realistically, it all started in 8th grade at whenever Pastor Scott Bright was doing a presentation over at, I think it was Carlow University, and these guys, the Lutherans with Live people, Gene and Myra and Clayton, I got to meet for the first time. They all dragged me in and had me do behind-the-scenes work for the first time, and that was 8th grade. And then going through high school, having a foundation at the high school that allowed us to do television, having a lot of support from my congregation to do this, and every Synod assembly, for example, I ran the camera, and it just started a foundation that has built me into this, and has given me strong roots into a faith community that has allowed me to take what I've learned inside of the church and used it into a real profession. So it's pretty interesting.
Good. Oh, we're glad that you use your gifts and your talents, not only here on the set of Lutherans Alive, but elsewhere as well. And to see those stories through the eyes of faith is a different thing. On the news each night, and sometimes as you said, some of the stories can be very heartbreaking. So in a way, you sort of knew what you were getting into.
Yes.
When you felt God's call to do this, but yet you're in the thick of it and working with others as well, others in the media. For example, you get to work not only with reporters, but with whom else do you work at WTOV?
Well, we have a whole complement of people, from directors to, I mean, you work with not only your staff, but sometimes, for example, CNN will use us and use my stories. I've been on CNN 7 or 8 times, just my stories. So it's pretty interesting because you have a whole mix of everybody. We're WPXI's sister station, so they'll give us from time to time stories, and we'll help them out, and it's just kind of neat. It really is.
Good. Dennis, thanks for what you've shared so far. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with more here on Lutherans Alive. Welcome back to Lutherans Alive. We continue our conversation with Dennis Lane, who happens to be a videographer, and we were talking a bit about the number of people with whom you work. Sometimes it takes a number of people to be involved in putting a news story out, but sometimes not so many people, right? Sometimes you're given a lot of freedom to do things yourself as a videographer. Can you say some words about that?
We obviously have a director. We have our talent. But a lot of times on a story, I will actually go do it myself and just go out, get the interviews, get the footage, get everything in hand, bring it back, even sometimes write up a little snippet about it and hand it to the reporter, who will rewrite it a little bit, and then they'll track it, and then I'll take it to air. I'll edit it and send it to the server, and it'll go to air. So it's realistically a videographer. It's a one-man operation. You just involve the reporter from time to time to do it. But there's also times that you need a reporter to have your back, and you need that person to help you out and to do their job as a reporter and to get the interviews and get everything set up. And then you also need to do your job and focus on just getting the videography, getting the lighting right, making sure the audio is correct. There's a whole bunch of processes you have to go through on every story. And you can do it as you're by yourself, it's okay, but having a teammate, it's much better. Being part of a team is much better.
You have others with whom you're exchanging ideas about how best to present a story. Exactly. And sort of feeding off each other there.
Yes.
Neat.
Yeah.
Neat. You've gotten to see a lot of things. Again, as you've said, stories of great joy, and yet also stories of great sorrow. There's one story that you said you wanted to share about something that happened last year. You want to talk about that?
It was April of 2009, right after Easter. Easter Sunday, we had the glorious service. And then Easter Monday, when I went into work, immediately I was probably about 10 miles outside of work whenever I get a phone call from my producer and reporter that morning, going, "You need to get in here now. We have a complete fatal accident. It is horrendous, and we need a crew down there now." A car slammed into the back of a tractor trailer, crossed the lane of the highway, and sheared the whole car off. It's one of those scenes you'll never forget. And that was on Monday. So covered that story, and it was a mess. It was a bad story, and I didn't think anything that the week could get any worse than that. I thought, this is a bad way to start off the week, but it'll get better. That later that evening, we heard about the Upper Big Branch mine exploding in Raleigh County, West Virginia, and it was decided that I was asked by my news director, "Do you want to go?" And now I had already been to Charleston one time, so being the adventurous person that I am, I like to go on these road trips, and we can provide a story not as easily as a lot of other stations can. We do it via the internet. We can do some stuff via the internet, and it really gets the story a lot faster back to the station, a lot more efficiently back to the station. So we got down to Raleigh County, and it dawned upon me, we were in Raleigh County, it was about 11 o'clock at night on Tuesday, and it dawned upon me when I'm standing in the middle of the street, surrounded by all these media people, that, 1,000 feet underneath us, there's 25, or there's 4 guys right then and there, because unfortunately over 20 had already passed away. But those 4 guys that they were looking for could be right below your feet, and you didn't know it. And it was just a very troubling thing for me, personally. And the next day, whenever we went down to the mine, we left and drove about 30 miles outside of it to go to our hotel room. And the next day when we came in, you saw on every church sign, "Please pray for our miners." And we pulled over at this one church, and they were not only cooking food, we wanted to know what they were doing and try to get a news story out of them. They not only gave us a news story and did a beautiful interview, but they talked about how their faith, how they needed to help not only the miners' families, but also the media covering it. And they allowed us to come into their church. They said, "Do you need to relax? Do you need a bottle of water?" They were being hospitable to us, the news media that came in to cover an event of great tragedy, but they were being the beacon of hope. This little church right down about 2 miles from the mine entrance. It was one of the most beautiful things that I think I've ever experienced, was just this the sense of this congregation being out in the community, saying not only to their own community and helping their own community, but to helping the international community. Because there were media from all over the world there. And it was just one of the most beautiful events I think I've ever experienced. But the next Sunday, I really needed, even though it's quoted as Low Sunday, being the second Sunday of Easter, I needed that Low Sunday to be my High Sunday, to bring me back to where I needed to be mentally and spiritually. So, and that next Sunday was a great church service, and I really enjoyed it. So you need to have a good spiritual root to be involved. I mean, you need to be involved in your congregation and have good spiritual foundation to be a news photographer, in my mind. Not a lot of people share that, but a lot of us have some sense of spirituality.
There's that unfortunate stereotype of the reporter who's just got to get the story, or the person that works for the news media that just wants to get the story, wants to get it first, and all that. And yet, Mr. Fred always said that television could be used for good. There's a lot of bad stuff on television, but that this is a medium that can be used for great good. And there's an example of faith-filled people wanting to tell the story for the right reasons. And because those kinds of events can bring communities together in these small towns where these mining communities are. But yet, through the help of the news media, you can bring even more people together, more prayers, more support, and it brings even more people together, even in the midst, and sometimes especially in the midst of a great tragedy, that a lot of good could be done there with the help of the news media. Thanks for being one of those folks, and what an incredible experience. I can see how that has sort of left a mark on you, and thanks for sharing that. We're going to have some more time to share right after we take another break here on Lutherans Alive. Welcome back to Lutherans Alive. We continue our conversation with Dennis Lane, who is a videographer and has got to see a lot of things. On a slightly lighter note, you've also, in your work, covered some sporting events. Can you say some words about that?
Well, first off, I cover most of the weeks of the season. We cover high school football. We're insane on high school football in the Ohio Valley, and that's where it realistically started. And I got to cover the Winter Classic at Heinz Field this past year, and that was an amazing experience. Seeing media not only from local, but the international community there covering. I got to watch one of the Penguins get interviewed in his native language, which was an interesting phenomenon that I got to witness, just standing right there and just witnessing. It was neat. And then went to the AFC Championship game right after church. My congregation gets to see my news chief from time to time because I have no other means I have to take home my news gear and everything to cover Steeler games sometimes, and parked it down at church, and they're going, "Oh, you're going to the AFC Championship game. You're going to go to the Super Bowl next week." No, we don't have credentials to go to the Super Bowl. We can't get into the Super Bowl. Go to the AFC Championship game. Obviously, the Steelers win the AFC Championship game. Call my news director. "We're going to the Super Bowl. I'll see what I can do." We thought we had no chance of going to the Super Bowl. Next day, I'm standing on a blood drive and get a call from my news director. "We're going to the Super Bowl." So yes, I got to go to the Super Bowl. That was an experience all in and of itself, just to not only get there, but to get around the city. the city had at least 2 inches of ice on it. Now, unlike Pittsburgh and the surrounding areas, we can actually deal with ice. They can't. They had no salt. They were throwing down sand, tons of sand, to try to get everything opened. They actually had to shut down the airport about 2 hours after we arrived to resand.
And just to be clear, we're talking about the 2011 Super Bowl, February of 2011, and this was in Dallas.
In Arlington, Dallas.
Right.
It was in the Metroplex down there. And normally it would take 35 minutes to get from the hotel in downtown Dallas to Arlington Stadium. It was taking people well over 2 hours to get from there to there. And that was with no rush hour traffic because the city, realistically, was shut down. It was just an experience because to walk from our little hotel out to an Italian restaurant, a small little Italian restaurant, it took 45 minutes and it was only 4 blocks away. I can't imagine around here taking 4 hours to walk 4 blocks in the middle of wintertime. So that was in and of itself an experience. And then being at the actual Super Bowl. Now, a lot of people will complain about, if people remember, the black seats that were sitting there that were tarped over, that were the temporary seats. We actually got to stand in front of them. So instead of losing seats, we actually gained 2 seats. And it was really interesting because I actually got to stand next to the audio director for the field. And I got to hear all the cues from the scoreboard and down in the field. And that was just an amazing experience, even though, unfortunately, our Steelers lost.
Did not end the way we wanted it to, no.
No.
But thanks for being there to support the team anyway.
And we actually got to go down at the end of the game, so it was more of a loss more than just... We actually got to go onto the field, and if they would have won, the Lombardi Trophy was just a couple feet from me, and it was in the wrong hands, unfortunately, in my mind. Some people's minds, probably not. And other Lutherans in Milwaukee and Green Bay, it's in the right hands, I guess.
Sometimes we talk about the ways in which we can live our faith in our daily life and work. And we talked about sharing stories, bringing communities together. Are there other ways in which you can see yourself and others in the news media living out their faith in their daily life and work?
Every day, whenever you get onto some of those scenes, and you have to be a comforter, even to your quote unquote competitors. Even though I don't believe in the business, we have competitors between the reporters and the videographers at other stations. Again, I was at that fatal fire, and they unfortunately had seen something that disturbed them a lot. And I just took them aside and I said, "Are you okay? And I'll be praying for you because you saw something that's terrible, and I know they've done the same for me." So it's an experience that you only get whenever you're in the news media, and you have a lot of friends in the news media that'll pray for each other or just be kind to one another, live out their faith in a way that's meaningful. So.
And we're certainly very thankful for the work that you do here among our own Lutherans Alive family. How's that been meaningful for you in your faith?
The people that we have behind the scenes here at Lutherans Alive are some of the most professional and the best people that I've met inside of the business. I mean, they are, and we're all volunteers, and we enjoy what we do, and we have a lot of fun with it. Even though I hope it get conveyed, and you do a great job as a new host. So, and thank you for what you do, and in front of the camera with all the interviewees and everything. So, it's another way to live out your faith.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. It's been a lot of fun, and I found it very meaningful work also. And thank you for your kind words, and thank you for what you do. Thanks publicly to Jean and Myra Fazard and Clayton Harmon and Pastor Paul Lubold, all a part of the Lutherans Alive family. From all of us Thanks to Denny Lane for being on the program today on this side of the camera. Thank you for being with us on Lutherans Alive as well. And we hope that you can come and join us for worship wherever you are, in your community, near your community. There's a Lutheran congregation that would be pleased to welcome you. Won't you come and worship with us, and won't you watch us next time on Lutherans Alive?